Hello, hello, Lauren. How
Hello,
are you?
everyone. I'm Lauren.
I'm Lily. Welcome to another one of our episodes. We're here to spread a lot of light and a lot of laughs, hopefully, have some fun. Thank you for joining us today, guys. Lauren, how are you?
I am doing amazing, and I have to say, every time I see our beautiful intro, I just can't help but smile. There just looks like so much good energy in that picture, in that little
Hopefully,
clip.
I mean, there's science behind that. Just sharing a smile, can brighten someone up. So hopefully that's what we do just with our intro and get people excited to hear about what we're going to talk about today. We're going to focus on something that Lauren is very much diving into right now, which is feeling worthy, finding our self worth, how that can all shape so many different parts of our life and where that can come from. So, Lauren, I want to get you to first tell us how you got so passionate about it very recently and what you've been doing to grow that.
So, I wanted to first introduce the fact that I am on what is called the 75 Hard Challenge right now. And for anyone who doesn't know, it is created by a man named Andy Frigela. I might be pronouncing the last name wrong. However, he has a beautiful podcast on Spotify or whatever you listen to podcasts on, and it elaborates. But quickly, one of the critical tasks that I have to do for my 75 hard, which is 75 days of a commitment, is read 10 pages of a book, not an audio book or a podcast, but a physical book every day for the next, I think I have 58 more days to go. So, so that is how I really got into right now learning about where does someone's worth come from? Where does their meaning, their purpose, their fulfillment come from? And I really want to give credit and thanks to the author, Stephen Covey, of the book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. Let me
Let
tell
me go
you,
ahead and put you in your own layout so you can really show that. So go ahead
so
and show that book there.
everyone, I just want you all to see this Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey. If you get an opportunity, that is a book I would highly recommend. I have applied this to part of my 75 hard reading. And obviously, what is the title discussing? Seven Habits of Effective People. So I am trying this 75 hard challenge was a commitment to myself to be the best version that I can be. And I committed to reading these 10 pages, which is helping me grow my mind and my capacity of seeing things in a different way. And so this book right now, I'm only on habit 2. But this book has enlightened me with so much information that I feel we just have to share with our audience, which let's get to it. What is your worth stemmed from? And I really want to discuss how in a previous episode we discussed values and passions and what are your principles, right? How do you lead your life and how do you want to be remembered? This goes hand in hand with where do you find your worth? And the book touches on a few of the most common. Now, this may not, you may not fit into it, but some of the common centers that people find their worthiness from. And so, one that really stood out to me, which I think when I touch on all the different ones, this one will really stand out. This is to each his own. But being possession centered. Now, I want to discuss before we get into the details of what are these centers. Your worth, what you center, what is the most important thing that you find most valuable, okay? Most important principle in your life. That helps you, as I was saying in a previous episode, guide you into the way you live and respond to your life. So your center influences what causes you to feel secure within yourself. When you feel security, then that will inspire guidance and wisdom. You need to be wise on what you feel secure that causes your worth. So, for example, with the possession center, right? So, if I'm centering myself on possessions, that means I get security. My security of my self worth is based on what I possess. Maybe it is name brand bags, jewelry, fine clothes, cars, boats, or it could even be my fame, my glory. Okay. When I center, that is what my worthiness comes from. Then I get security, I get validated every time I have a new possession or a new fame, celebrity. Let's talk about social media. A new like. That provides me the security of my self-worth. Now, let's discuss it further. Because I am so self-centered on possessions, that guides me to lead a life focusing my energy on possessing or becoming more famous or becoming more, seen, right? That is causing me to focus my wisdom and energy on those possessions. And what that really entails is we act out of our power comes from what we feel self-worthy on. So let me just briefly touch on what the book discusses, specifically for that one possession center. They quickly say, so I can make it kind of circle all in. If you are possession centered, your security is based on your reputation, your social status, or the tangible things that you possess. Now, your guidance is you make your decisions based on what you will protect to increase or display your possessions. So you see, I'm feeling worthy based on my possessions. Now, all of my decisions, my guidance is going to be based on how I can display those possessions because that's where I get my worth from. Now, the wisdom, you see the world in terms of comparative economic and social relationships. So if I am solely centered on what I possess or how I am being seen, then my relationships is only based on possessions or how I'm being displayed. And then finally, I get my power and you function within the limits of what you can buy or the social prominence that you can achieve. So, what do you think on this little four-section piece that kind of helps you see how you navigate your life based on your worthiness? What do you
I
think?
think that I think that I've gone through my life in many different points of my life, almost fighting that. And I can think back to being little and receiving something or wanting something that every kid had.
Yes.
that the kids, when you're a kid, well, everyone did this, went here, has this. So for you to feel happy, then you must do that or have that. So I think
That's a prime example.
it
Prime
starts
example.
when we're little, is that fight of, are we as a child, because it's very simple when you're little, am I going to fit in and be able to relate? And am I going to be seen a certain way if I don't have these things, or if I do have these things?
Yeah.
So I think there's many things that if we look back, we're like, oh my gosh, that childhood staple, that toy, whatever. Or when people might share something like, everyone remembers this because marketing, because, it's done in a certain way to when you're a child, you're so much more easily influenced
Mhm.
to believe this. And as a parent, it's really hard to control unless you yourself are aware and not putting value on that. So sometimes then we spoke of values, but I think this is a different type of value. So um I think for me, different parts of my life, figuring that out and maybe realizing how it might not be important, and then realizing when it was important and still is important. And it's so unfortunate because you almost have to figure out your own method with certain people, depending on the situation and depending on why that situation is important, for you to decide what version of you might be, and what values you will decide to share with that person.
Lily,
So
does that go hand in hand with what we were just discussing about your principles and how it will be the way you react to people?
yeah,
So
yeah.
doesn't it all just intertwine
So
together?
feeling worthy, I think, depends a lot too of who you're being surrounded by, like you said, how they make themselves feel worthy, and how that can impact your, sense of worthiness based on that. Or if you have that very much, you know, something that cannot be changed or shaken, then you might also have to adapt yourself based on those people. And
Mhm.
and then I can also say, like, so there was, when I was a child, maybe that was the first time that I, as a child, realized, okay, what people found to be worthy in you were those things, because we're children and it's so basic. And then when you get, to a different age, then it might be based on how you look. Because when you're very little, yes, it's how you look, but it's more of, I think, very much a possession type of thing, because
Materialistic,
little
yeah.
little kids don't think too deeply. Then when you get older, and then the boys and the girls start realizing who's attractive, who is
Mhm.
not, who you are attracting, how many people you're attracting. A lot of people can
Yeah.
start feeling then at those ages that that's where they get their self-worth. And then back to the possessions. Then maybe, okay, maybe a girl is not thinking she's the most attractive, but she has all the things that everyone wants to have. So then she brings her self-worth from that. Maybe another girl doesn't have all the possessions, but she feels that she's physically attracting people. So then she can get her self-worth from that. And I think it just translates to then being an adult, and then figuring out what people, because a lot of people are being shaped by others' perception of them and their worth. Then you figure out, okay, this is what people find to be the most worthy in me. Sometimes for people, it's their personality.
Yes.
Sometimes it's, you're such a happy person, I see your worth in your happiness. When you bring your happiness, when you bring, maybe for you, your energy, you are worthy because you brought that energy. But the day that you don't want to bring that energy, are you still worthy to those people? So
Exactly. That's
I
what I want
think
to touch on. That's really my
I,
next
I
topic.
think that it can be imbued in so many ways, and through my life I can look back and think so many different times that I unfortunately not even just because of the industry, the entertainment industry or media industry, or when I used to model, not just because that was one of the most important things is, all the physical and material things.
Of course.
But I mean, since we're little, we get shaped. It's really hard to fight it because I know my mom and my dad didn't put value into those things, but like you can be manipulated. That's what I started to think was my self-worth as a child was, could
Based
I
off of
have
your
these things?
material
Yeah.
possessions and how people
And
viewed you.
but my parents did not, although a lot of people's parents, I specifically remember being very small, them telling their kids this, telling them this is where their worth was. So
Yes.
some parents couldn't themselves think any other way because they still thought that for themselves. So my parents didn't, and I still thought and looked and examined and found out how I needed to be perceived for people to find worth in me.
Yes, yes. Lily, I really want to touch on because you were bringing up such a great point about how when you're a kid, you comparing yourself to others based on your material possessions or, how you are viewed and accepted by others. And I really want to touch base on this for our viewers. You are not what other people identify you as. Okay, you have the ability to rewrite your script, your creator. You are able to do that every single day. I am not the same person I was yesterday, maybe the last minute, last month, last year. I have the ability to change my script. And why? Because I have the ability, I am self aware to figure out what is my centering all of my worthiness from, right? And I wanted to touch on the base that it's neither right or wrong, but can somebody see how focusing yourself on, as I said, there are multiple different centers that I would like to touch on, but for example, another one being family centered. Okay, you get your security based from how your family responds to you. Okay? You make your decisions based on what's best for the family, right? Do you see how centering yourself on anything else besides your principles that we had discussed in a prior episode on what are the things that you want to be known for, remembered, and valued, right? If you center yourself on anything other than your true principles that you want to be as a person in this world, can you see the toxicity and how your worthiness is not secure if it's based on anything else that's external? So, for example, with the possessions. Or I want to touch on another one. If you're friend centered, right? I get all of my worthiness based on how my friends feel about me. So then that means my worthiness is basically at risk every time I have an encounter with a friend. And let's say we have a disagreement and I feel you are unhappy with me, right? I may feel less worthy because my friend is mad at me. So I want to tie this all back in that it's not wrong to have these passions that you care
Yeah.
about,
Yes.
but
As
I
long as that
feel
is not where your self-worth,
yes.
where all of it comes from.
And I'm gonna be 100% honest with the influencers. I mean, with the, the influencers, with our viewers, who we are influencing at the moment. But I want to be honest, even with you. I am 30 something years old, and I am just starting to evaluate, where do I get my worthiness from? And the reason why I'm so passionate about this right now is because it took me this book to realize all the different things I can find my worthiness from, and how that's not necessarily the best, because it gives me an unstable environment. I am not a, my worthiness is based on external forces that cannot be controlled. Where my worthiness needs to be based on internal forces that I can control, which are my principles, my values, and how I want to be remembered, right?
I want to add to what you're saying because I was fortunate that my mom has this confidence about herself. And I will say that my mom grew up very humbly. She didn't finish her schooling. So it's not based on anything she was taught in a school or by any particular person.
Just
This
her
is
character. This
It
is
is her
her.
character. She has this confidence that I admire so much from her because many of us would have found it from our education, from
Yeah.
what we were taught, because it's really hard to imagine finding confidence on your own with
Mhm.
no family, which she grew up not having. Although she does have a physical family, that's a whole nother story. But from the
Mhm.
age of 8, she didn't have a family around her. She was in
Wow.
another part of the country.
Uh,
She worked as from being a child, she had a job. And you would think in this situation, how would you have confidence when everything around you is going wrong?
yes.
Where do you find your confidence when material things aren't there? When
Mhm.
the family's not there, when you're not being shown love, where do you find your worth?
Hey,
If
thank
you
you.
don't think anyone is giving you what we perceive as worth, but I also want, to add that it's because we see something that we even know what worth is. Because if we weren't seeing all these things, we wouldn't even have anything to associate all of these connections to.
Yes.
So I have to say that my mom has this confidence and assurance about herself that I've always been amazed with. And my sisters and I have talked about this. We don't necessarily tell her. We've told
Aw.
her, we admire her for a lot of things, but we don't say very specifically that there is this confidence about her. There is this belief that she has that we specifically as kids, and she instilled this in me as a child. And then I know your parents can tell you this, that you can do anything, but the way that she would tell me, I really believed it. And I always knew it's my mom, of course she's going to tell me I can achieve everything. But even though she didn't have an example of that, and she didn't have anyone to tell her this, to believe this from her. She believed it for us. And
She had that conviction. She
I
had, it was her
think,
character.
yeah, and I thank your parents because that's confidence. That if they help you build your confidence, it's not that they're putting your worth into connected to anything but in you. If
You.
if you can build that confidence about yourself, it doesn't matter how you look or what you own, you will
Mhm.
have that sense of worthiness because you are sure that you are worthy and no one has to tell you you are worthy. And I think I was very fortunate to have my mom's mentality impact me from a very young age. And yes, she showed me a lot of love. And love can help someone feel that they are enough when someone really has unconditional love for someone. And that is valuable. And I feel like a lot of my confidence and a lot of my self-worth, I was very fortunate to learn from my mom. She didn't put any value in a lot of external things. And I'm so fortunate for that because it's so hard. I don't know how she didn't. I don't know how she was able to not, especially coming from humble beginnings.
Of course,
To,
of
to
course.
having she shaped her own life to be something completely different than anything that her family was able to imagine. So the fact that she worked so hard to build who she is now and still not put so much, worthiness on all of these exterior things is impressive. And I, like I said, then went and figured out what I thought other people thought was worthy because my mom wasn't putting value on those things, but
Mm-hmm.
other people were. So it's really, really hard. And you mentioned social media, it's another place where it's really hard. And unfortunately, you might say, okay, but at one point in my life, I did do this or say this or acted this way or whatever or
Mm-hmm.
bought that thing. Um, because we do sometimes feel the pressure. And then I also think sometimes you have to make the conscious decision to say, I don't find so much value in this, but is this somehow going to help me achieve something that I am going to achieve? And then figure out how you can work with society and with yourself. Because we have to acknowledge that the world keeps going. The world finds value in material. We need a home. We have to put value in that. We need a car. We need to
Yeah.
put value into that. But is that our worth? No. When that's all taken it away, we're still worthy of so much. So I don't know what you think of all of that, Lily.
I just want to elaborate that first. I love the story about your mom and how she had this just confidence about her, this conviction. And I really want to explain how that clearly shaped her life based on what she felt was worthy. She had, a very humble upbringing. And I want to make that very clear to all of our viewers. We all come from different backgrounds and we all have different upbringings. And that doesn't mean that's who you are. Okay. So I really want to touch on your worthiness should come in a sense from asking yourself, what do I bring to the table? Right? Regardless if my family is involved, regardless if I have friends, right? Regardless if I have possessions, regardless if I have a spouse or a partner, right? Just regardless of we could have multiple things. You could even be self-centered. And I want to touch on that later because that's not even necessarily 100% a positive thing to center yourself around just yourself, but knowing what you bring to the table. What, again, do I value, right? How do I want to be seen? What do I care about, right? To my values of respect, right? I want to be known as a respectful individual. So I'm going to center myself around respect, which means I feel security when I am feeling respect. And therefore, I make decisions and I am guided based off my worthiness of, let's say, respect, right? And with that, I then get wisdom and I'm able to put action in play and show up the certain way that I want to show up based on my worthiness coming from respect. So that's just my one example. But again, viewers, this is a great time to do the practice exercise. What do you value? What are your principles? And that will help show you what you find worthy and how to live your life day to day. You
I
know,
want,
what do
I
you
want
think?
people to share with us where they found their self-worth, if they're still trying to find it, if they struggle to just commit to, you know, feeling worthy on their own, because it is such a hard thing to
It
do.
is. It
I
is.
can't say that sometimes external factors haven't at that moment made me feel, sad or upset because they thought they owned my worth. And
Yes.
and and sometimes how it can be perceived that other people might perceive your worth is now gone because something has changed. So I will admit that in the world we live in today, it is difficult. It is so difficult. But I've been fortunate to really have that base and to really have, although all those other things came up, at the end of the day, the people around me help me stay balanced and centered and know that none of that is really worth anything. And it's funny because sometimes you have to figure it out for yourself. You have to go
100%.
screw up, you have to
Yeah.
go be like, what is this even worth? And it's not. And sometimes, no matter how much everyone tells you, you have to go, you have to do it, and then tell yourself, yeah, okay, this is not for me. For some people, it might be. It might be that forever, their whole life. That is fine. We are just sharing our opinion of what we think is best for us at this moment and what we see as worthy at this moment. And Lauren, we have this great topic that we're going to just blend everything into one. It's such a huge thing that we're going to talk about in our next episode, and that is how we are one. And I know that it sounds so simple, but when you think your boss, your sister, your mom, people on the street, when
Mm-hmm.
you connect how we are all connected, excuse me, how we are one, it really can get mind blowing. And sometimes it's so deep to think about, but we're going to touch on that in our next episode. Lauren, anything you want to say before we wrap up here?
I just want everyone to focus and realize it doesn't happen overnight. We have to put the work in, right?
That's right. And with that, we're going to say goodbye to everyone. Thank you so much for watching. We wish you the best.
Kisses.